I love this city. My family has. We've made so many really good friends. And Pam, we talked a little earlier. You know, how many of you in this audience have lost a loved one to cancer or lost a loved one to a serious disease? You get it. You get it. And the fact of the matter is that Pam and I were talking about it. There's so many heroes in America, and I mean this sincerely from the bottom of my heart, who suffered a heck of a lot more than me and my family have suffered, but don't have any of the kind of help that I've had and the support from the community and from friends and from family. And but yet they get up every single day. They walk out and put one foot in front of the other. They do their job. They care for their children, their families, and they care for the people around them. And I think they deserve an incredibly better circumstance than many of them find themselves in. And folks, one of the great things about being able to run for vice president or the president or being able to be out around the country is in the process, you not only meet supporters, but a lot of your supporters become genuinely your close personal friends. It's an inordinate opportunity to meet some incredible people. And there's no city in the country I've met more decent, honorable, and caring people. And I really mean that. And I didn't plan on going into that, but I didn't know that, anyway, I just think there's my Jill, my wife, or actually I'm her husband. Y'all think I'm kidding, don't you? No. I'm known as Jill's husband and proud of it. I had to work real hard to get that title. I had to ask her 5 times to marry me. 5. That's the God's truth. And some of you know, the last time I was with Andy Young, we were in South Africa trying to figure out how to see Nelson Mandela a long time ago. I was with the Black Caucus, and I came back after I don't know how many days, 6, 8, 10 days away, and I got off the plane in Philadelphia and went back, and I stopped at her apartment, knocked on the door, and I said, Jilly, I said, you've got my Irish. She said, come on in. I said, no. I said, you got my Irish pride up now. I said, I want to tell you, and I mean it sincerely. It's okay if you say no, but it's the last time I'm going to ask you. Last time. I'm not asking you when, but if. If you will you marry me? She looked at me, she went like this. Okay. My sister, who a lot of you know, Valerie, later asked her, she said, what made you change your mind? She said, well, I fell in love with the boys going on. It's okay, well, anyway, that's another story. But folks, look, you're going to be seeing a lot of me. I promise you this. No one is going to work harder to win your trust and your help. I mean that sincerely. And I want to thank Denise Stoll for being here, our county auditor. I want to thank the mayor and the real mayor, Deb, for being here. Y'all think I'm kidding. Let me tell you something. If you are the spouse of a mayor, a spouse of a governor, you work full-time for nothing. And anyway, but thank you. And I also want to thank Ken, former Dubuque County Sheriff, was with us, and we had the great honor, of recommending him to be U.S. Marshal, and he did one heck of a job for us. And Lindsay, congratulations, kid. Congratulations. It was wonderful. I really mean it. And Rick and our former state representative and president of the Dubuque, Greater Dubuque Development, I get the backwards, Development Corp. Anyway, you're doing a hell of a job, pal. And Kathy Flynn, Floro, our former county treasurer, and I'm talking about you become really good friends with people. To Terry, John, and Ellen Goodman and the whole family, they've been great supporters and great friends. We've never lost contact with each other from the time we met years ago. And folks, it's not hyperbole to suggest, I think we all know, whether you're a 15-year-old kid or whether you're my age, all the way through the spectrum. Well, no, this is you know in your gut, this election for president is different than any we've seen in our lifetime. Not a joke, not about me, it's about the circumstance we find ourselves in. The core values of this nation, our standing in the world, which I will be giving talk an awful lot about in terms of our foreign policy, our standing in the world, our very democracy, everything that's made America America is at stake. And we all know why. Limited to 4 years, history will treat this administration's time as an aberration in time. But, if there's 8 years of this administration, I think it will, I mean this sincerely, will forever and fundamentally change and alter the character and the trajectory of this nation. And folks, beyond Democrat or Republican, and by the way, this is not your father's Republican Party, as the old saying goes. This is a different breed of cat now. They talk about there's a division in the Democratic Party. We agree on basically everything, all of us running, all 400 of us. But I know too many of my Republican friends in the House and Senate. This is not the Republican Party. And there's great divisions in the Republican Party. But look, folks, we can't let 8 years of this president, because I think he will forever and fundamentally alter the very character of this nation. And folks, the threat that is posed to this nation is unlike, as I said, any I've seen in my lifetime. You know, I saw it most vividly in Charlottesville, down in Virginia. You know, these folks, for the first time since the 20s, when the Klan marched down the streets by the thousands on Pennsylvania Avenue, and members of the House and Senate and some governors were members of the Klan. Since then, I don't remember any time, at least in my lifetime, and that's the historical context I talked about with John Meacham, who wrote The Soul of America, another book. Out into the open, out of the fields at night, carrying torches, crazed looks on their faces, carrying torches and swastikas, accompanied by white supremacists, chanting the same anti-Semitic bile that was chanted in the 30s in Germany. And, you know, and then many on the alt-right and this president, when they were confronted by decent, honorable people who had the courage to stand against this hate, and violence ensued. The response when he asked, what did he think? He said, quote, very fine people on both sides. No Democrat or Republican president or anybody who I know has run in the past, except maybe George Wallace in the 60s. No, I'm not being facetious. I'm being serious. Have said anything like that. And you know, in a few days later, after he was asked about what I said, he doubled down, concocting a phony story about how those violent thugs only wanted to protect the statue of Robert E. Lee. Give me a break, man. Give me a break. Folks, it's nonsense. That rally was advertised. It was advertised as a white supremacy rally. The anti-Semitic chants about Jews in America could be heard around the world. Around the world. Hatred was on the march, and he knew it. I said at the time, and I wrote at the time, with Atlantic Magazine, that we're in a battle for the soul of the nation. And we are in a battle for the soul of the nation. This is not who we are. This is not who we are. It's not who the vast majority of the American people are. That's why, above all else, we have to put an end, and electorally, to this administration. But the stakes are too high. The stakes are too high. The second reason I'm running for president, quite frankly, is it's just the stakes are too high for the backbone of America. I call the backbone middle-class, hardworking American people. The stakes are much too high. Let's get something straight. This country was not built by Wall Street, bankers, hedge fund managers. They're not necessarily bad. It wasn't built by them. It was built by my and your ancestors. It was built by hardworking, ordinary people who did extraordinary things, not only in defending the country, but building this country across the board. It wasn't built by them. It was built by you, by the American middle class, ordinary people who did extraordinary things. And the history of the journey of this country is that when given half a chance, ordinary people do extraordinary things. Just give them something approximating a level playing field. Folks, so what happened? So many people out there in your state and mine and all across America are worried the American dream is slipping from their grasp and won't even be available to their children. Just look at the data. Look at what's happening all over the country in terms of attitudes. There's a lot of things that we can point to as to why it happened. But what stands out to me is that there used to be a basic bargain in America. But today that bargain drove the most successful economic growth in the history of the world, literally, not figuratively. That bargain has been broken. The bargain was pretty simple. If you worked hard, you were part of a successful enterprise and it succeeded, you got to share in the benefits. But that's changed. That's changed. When their enterprise hit hard times, what happened? Everybody took a hit, from the CEO to the secretaries. But that's changed. The only people who now benefit when a country does well are the CEOs and the stockholders. Folks, things have changed. I have a cartoon hanging in my office, and I had it when I was, the last several years, I was vice president. It's a cartoon from the New Yorker magazine, and it has a picture of a big, stout guy in a black turtleneck, a black beret, and a black mask on, and he's sitting at a table being interrogated, and there's a big bag, a burlap bag on the table with a dollar sign on it. And he's looking at the interrogator, and he said, "I'm sorry, how was I supposed to know he was a job creator?" Since when are the only people who are the job creators and benefit are the people who are stockholders and the CEOs? Let me ask you something. The people who build our automobiles on the assembly line and sell them, are they no longer job creators? The people who grow our food, transport our food, protect us, are they not job creators? What's this? Oh, no, I really mean it. Just think about it. Think about how fundamentally it's changed. I don't want to get too wonky here, but Milton Friedman, the conservative economist back in the late 80s, said there's only one obligation a corporation has, and that's to their shareholders. They have an obligation to their employees, to the community they live in, the place they support. They have an obligation, but they've walked away from it. And an awful lot of corporations know it. But quite frankly, they're afraid if they do it the right way, they will not be able to compete with those who are doing it the wrong way. And so, folks, ladies and gentlemen, the fact of the matter is that we have to change this. They have to change it in a way so when folks, as I said, who grow our food, process our food, package it, et cetera, they should succeed when everybody else succeeds in that corporation, when the stockholders and the other folks succeed. You know, my dad used to have an expression. I've been saying this for years because he really did say this all the time. He said, Joey, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about respect. It's about your place in the community. It's about your standing. It's about being able to look your child in the eye and say, honey, it's going to be okay. And mean it. And mean it. Know it. Well, folks, a significant portion of working Americans don't have any confidence they can look their child in the eye and say, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Because, folks, that's what we got to change. But this time when we rebuild the middle class, we have to bring everyone along. No matter their race, their gender, their ethnicity, their religion, who they love, or where they live. They've been left behind. No, I really mean it. And folks, that will be the measure of what I consider economic success if I'm elected, not just the GDP. It's well beyond that. At its core, it's really about restoring the dignity of work. Being able to provide, and by that I mean the dignity of work is being able to provide for your family security and peace of mind. With a little bit of breathing room to be able to do that. And ladies and gentlemen, that's been stripped from people. How can a person's dignity be maintained if they can't afford to take care of a sick child because they have a pre-existing condition and they can't afford it? How is a parent's dignity able to be maintained when they look at their child who has a terminal illness and know that they're going to be told by their insurance company, you've run out of your coverage, no more palliative care? I thought about that with Bo. We knew it was terminal what he had. He fought like the devil bravely for a year. But folks, I couldn't imagine an insurance company come along and telling me, enough, you got to stop. No more coverage. Think of all the people who before we passed the Affordable Care Act were in that position. They're being stripped of their dignity. How can a parent maintain his or her dignity if their talented, qualified child who has the capacity and the desire to go beyond high school, if they can't afford to help them with their education? Whether it's trade school, whether it's community college, whether it's college, whatever it is. I remember when I was a kid, I had an opportunity to go to a school that I couldn't afford to get to. I wanted to go. And I remember going down the night of my senior prom to change cars with my dad. He ran a car dealership, and I always got a nice car in the prom nights. I swear to God. I remember driving down after a baseball game to his business, parking the car where I always would park it, my 51 Plymouth, which was really great, by the way. That was even old for me then. And I ran in and I asked Mary, I said, Mary, where's Dad? She said, he's out in the lane, honey, where you're going to fix the cars. And I walked out, and I think how many parents go through this? And my dad looked up, and I said, what's the matter, Dad? He said, I'm so sorry, pal. I'm so sorry. And I thought, this is before cell phones. When something happened to my brother or my sister or my mom, or what happened? I said, Dad, what's the matter? He said, I went to the bank today, honey, to try to borrow the money to help you get there. He said, they won't lend me the money. I'm so ashamed. He had nothing to be ashamed about. But think about it. Think about the people this June are going to be sitting around their kitchen table and saying, who's going to tell her we just don't have enough to get her back to school? We're going to have to do the following. Thousands, millions of Americans are making those judgments because education is being priced out of control. You know, the philosopher Kant defined dignity this way. He said, dignity is that people should never be treated as a means to an end, but as an end in themselves. Think about it. Think about it. The new emerging corporate culture. Think about it, with this new tax cut. You got twice as many corporations making billions without paying no taxes at all. Send their job. I mean, but I mean, it's not about, I know you're supporting by saying booing, but look, here's the deal. It's just simply not right. It's simply not right. And folks, look, the idea that that you're in a position where dignity doesn't even come into the thought process of so many employers these days. And you know, we're not only making it harder for you to meet the basic needs of hard-working, middle-class, and working-class people by stripping them of their dignity. Just talk to union members. There's been a war on labor's right to bargain for a long time, but we've gone way beyond that. Think about what's happened in the last 10 years or so. There's also a war on individuals as well. 40% of workers will have to sign a non-compete clause at some point in their career. And fact of the matter is, non-compete agreements have one purpose: to hold down the ability to bargain for yourself. I can understand it if you work for a technology company and you have serious secrets or whatever. But I can't understand it for hourly workers. Why in God's name do so many have to sign non-compete agreements? There's no other rationale for it than to hold down wages. Folks, look, if we get what's happened lately as well. Do companies classify low-wage workers as managers? Why do they do that? They do it for a simple reason. Because under the law, if you are not in management, you are entitled to overtime. Just last year alone, 4 million hourly workers were cheated out of $1.2 billion in lost wages. And where'd it go? It went into the corporate coffers. And what they do is they didn't expand, most of them. They bought back their own stock, raising the stock prices for their stockholders and enriching themselves in terms of pay. Look, speaking of overtime, I think it's long past time that we pass a national $15 an hour minimum wage. Enough's enough. And look, I'm going to talk to you a lot about what I'm going to do as president, but I'm not going to take the whole time now. We'll lay out all the details as you're going to hear me a lot when I come back in specifics. But here's the deal. The first step as president, my goal will be to reward work, not just wealth. Work. And the first step is reversing the tax cuts and eliminating some of the $1.6 trillion, now get this, $1.6 trillion in loopholes. They call them expenditures. There's $1.6 trillion in our tax code that are called tax expenditures, loopholes. You cannot justify anywhere near all of them. At a minimum, $300 billion of those dollars are total, absolutely waste and giveaways to the super wealthy. And by the way, I think the vast majority of even those people understand it and they're prepared to give it up. But here's the deal. You look at them and say, here it is. Well, they can say, no, don't give me that tax break. We got to stop. We got to not be afraid to make it clear what we're going to do. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, we're in a situation where we have to cut the top tax rate for the super wealthy. I mean, he's cut the top tax rate for the super wealthy, got all these new loopholes, and in addition to that, his tax bill shipped jobs overseas and rewarded them from shipping jobs overseas. Then what happened? Then they increased, as a consequence of this tax cut, $2 trillion increased in the national debt. $2 trillion. And I predicted what would happen because, anyways, I go back to the Roth-Kemp stuff. I predict what would happen. The next thing would be, you know, we got this gigantic deficit. We can't sustain it this way. So guess what? We have to find cuts. And where do they go? At the social safety net. They go at Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. Mark my words. If he's reelected and the Republicans gain control, keep control of the Senate, this is going to be the battle of our lives. And if I'm president, it will not happen. It will not happen. Folks, we need to get rid of these capital gains cuts and loopholes for the super wealthy. You know, no one other than Warren Buffett, a billionaire, said it. He pointed out, because of capital gains treatment I get, I paid a lower tax rate than my secretary. How can that possibly be justified? How can it be justified? Folks, look, the fact of the matter is, as I said, we should be rewarding work, not just wealth. And look, we got to finish the job, and speaking of security, on health care. You know, when we passed the Affordable Care Act, I told President Obama it was a big deal, or something to that effect. Thank God my mom wasn't around. Whoa. And I didn't think anybody could hear it. But folks, I want to stop here and say something that I don't think is said often enough. President Obama has extraordinary character. No, really, I mean it. Extraordinary integrity, and is a man of absolute decency. He was president. When he was president, our kids had someone to look up to. I was proud every day as I stood next to him as his vice president, but never more proud than the day we passed that law. The Affordable Care Act was a gigantic step forward for the people in this country, for our future. We made historic progress. The fact of the matter is we extended health care to 22 million people who didn't have it before. We covered pre-existing conditions. I can go on with the list, you know it. But now, folks, we got to finish the job. We got to finish the job. We got to move from making health care a privilege to a right. Health care should be a right. And to give everyone the peace of mind they need. Health care is about peace of mind. How many people go to bed at night staring at the ceiling thinking, my God, if something happens to me, we're going to lose everything. My family will lose everything. Folks, I believe whether or not your health care is covered through your employer, whether it's covered on your own or not at all, everyone should have a choice to buy into a public option health care plan like Medicare. Every single person. You can keep your private plan if you want, but you should have an option to be able to buy in. Thirdly, I think we have to invest much more in education. Education. And I'll be talking about a lot of this in detail because when I growing up in high school, college, and after that, everybody knew about the Iowa test. Everybody knew about what an incredible school system you had. No, I really mean it. I know you value it. And look what your Republican governors have done to it, among other things. No, I'm serious. I'm serious. But folks, we have to get rid of the Trump-DeVos education agenda. We have to start by giving people the skills they need to be able to compete in the 21st century. 12 years of education is simply not enough to be able to make it in the middle class in the 21st century. And that's a fact. The facts are that 65 out of every 100 jobs in America today require something beyond a high school education. Today. There are tens of thousands of high-paid jobs, decent-paying jobs in high-tech industries that they can't be filled because we're not training the people. We're not giving them the opportunity because the cost. Anybody lately have to pay college tuition? Raise your hand. Well, let me tell you something. It's incredible. And by the way, be careful if you pick a private college. Our kids are graduating in incredible debt. And I'm going to release a plan. I don't have time. I don't want to keep you standing any longer, but to, in fact, make sure we can cut their debt, reduce their debt. But folks, I have so much more to say, but I'm not going to say it because I've already kept you standing too long. But here's the deal. We got to make sure the economy works not only to folks with four-year degrees and and graduate degrees beyond that. We've got to make sure it works for those who complete on-the-job training, trade programs, community colleges, because there's plenty to do out there. There's a lot more we need to do to restore the middle class and win the future, and we have to be much more ambitious than we are now, to do the things that we had talked about doing in our administration. I was interviewed by one of your statewide radio folks today, and they were quoting me about early on my talking about the need to deal with climate control, climate change, the need to deal with it, went on and on. Well, it's long overdue, man. It's long overdue. As we rebuild the infrastructure of this country, we have to build a green infrastructure. We can do that. Clean, renewable energy. I don't have to tell you about what you've been able to do here and the jobs created by wind and renewable energy. I don't have to tell cleaner, safer, and faster transportation. We had a plan, and where I'm going to reintroduce it to make sure it gets done, is that electric vehicles. Electric vehicles, in fact, the biggest problem is you can't stop to charge. We should have charging stations along every interstate highway in the country. You pay for it just like you did gasoline. But if you can do that with bicycles in town, and you can put a nickel, I'm serious. What are we doing? What are we doing? The fact of the matter is, folks, this is not only going to help the existential threat that exists, unless we do something serious about climate change now. We're running out of time. But those of you in the trades know we will create millions of good-paying middle-class jobs you can raise a family on. You can raise a family on. Folks, the idea that we can't do this is beyond my comprehension. We can do this all without punishing anybody, by eliminating the hundreds of billions of dollars of unnecessary loopholes for the super wealthy. And it's not going to punish, again, anybody. For example, we could send every single solitary person in America qualified to go to community college for free. It costs $6 billion. They say, well, there goes that big spending Biden. We can do it by eliminating one $17 billion tax loophole out of $1.6 trillion in tax loopholes. It's called stepped-up basis. If, God forbid, you're cashing in capital gains, you get hit by a truck, God forbid, you lose your life, and you were about to pay your tax on it, and it's left to your child, they don't have to pay any tax. It's not an inheritance tax. It was a tax owed 10 seconds earlier, beforehand. By that, we could put every single person that's qualified in community college, cutting in half the cost of a four-year college, because your state universities accept the transfers of the credits in almost every state in the United States of America. And in the process, increase productivity and give people opportunities in a job. This is not rocket science, folks. It's simple, basic stuff. But speaking of rocket science, we have to look at the future. The future here. We have an enormous possibilities. If we just invest, imagine what we do if we can invest significantly more money like we did with the cancer research as we left as vice president. Here's the deal, guys. We're on the cusp of fundamentally altering diseases like cancer, Alzheimer's, addiction, so many things out there that would not only save people's lives and extend their lives, but save the country billions of dollars. Billions. Look what's happening here. Look what's happening with what your Republican friends did with privatizing Medicaid. I mean, seriously. You haven't lost, like many other states have yet, your rural hospitals. But talk to the people who live in places like, where I was campaigned in Montana and North Dakota and the big states. We're literally putting people's lives in jeopardy when those hospitals close. God forbid you're in an accident. Those of you who are first responders, it's a heck of a lot better. You can save a life if you can get them to the hospital in 5 minutes or 10 minutes rather than an hour. So, folks, there's so much here that's totally within our capacity to do. Folks, I get a little too excited about this. Look. The reason I'm so optimistic about what we can do if we just get up and remember who in God's name we are, change this administration. I'm optimistic that we're better positioned than any country in the world to own the 21st century. Not a joke. I got characterized and I got elected as a 29-year-old kid to the Senate, too young to be sworn in. I was labeled the optimist. I'm more optimistic today about America's chances. This generation of college kids, the millennials, they're the best educated generation in the history of the United States of America. They understand what's going on. They know what's happening. They have enormous capacity. Enormous capacity. And folks, look, I'll end by saying that, we not only have the strongest military in the world, but we lead not only by the example of our power, but by the power of our example. That's what's allowed us to organize the world. Ladies and gentlemen, the facts, we have the most productive workers in the world. 4 times as productive as workers in Asia, and that's not hyperbole, that's real. 4 times as productive. Ladies and gentlemen, North America is energy independent, and the United States of America, if we do the right thing, will be energy independent and cleaner within the next 5 years. Folks, we have more great research universities in the United States of America than all the rest of the world combined. As my wife, the professor, would say, if you doubt me, Google it. Not a joke. We do. And that's where every major fundamental change that changes people's lives and make them better has come out of. Corporations, they're not bad folks. They come along and they monetize it, which needs to be done. But the research, almost every single breakthrough comes out of those great research universities. And you own them. You own them. There are places like Los Alamos. I can go through all those great universities right here in the state of Iowa. Folks, I don't know why we think we walk around like, oh, woe is me. What are we going to do? Man, we got to get up. Get up. Lift our heads up. Remember who we are. This is the United States of America. We can do anything. We demonstrate. Not a joke. We can do anything we've set our minds to. When John Kennedy made that famous speech about going to the moon, there's one line, everybody kid in grade school even now knows what it says, but there's one line that stuck with me and still sticks with me. He said, we're doing this because we refuse to postpone any longer. I refuse to postpone any longer the ability of us to do these things. It's time for us to do them. It's within our wheelhouse. We have the capacity to do them. And folks, everybody knows who Donald Trump is. We got to let them know who we are. They got to know who we are. We choose hope over fear. We choose unity over division. We choose truth over lies. And we choose science over fiction. Folks, so pick up your heads. Remember who we are. Not a joke. This is the United States of America. Let's get up and move. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, man. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's good to be back.